EA has been touting throughout 2018 that they're listening to feedback after the Battlefront 2 controversy, and one way they've shown that is by removing loot boxes from upcoming AAA titles. Games like Battlefield 5 and Anthem have gone out of their way to emphasize that there would be no loot boxes in them whatsoever, that microtransactions would only be confined to upfront cosmetic purchases, whose rewards can also be earned through gameplay. The impression that EA wants to give off with all this is that they've had a change of heart, that they've learned from their mistakes, and yet hypocritically, EA has insisted that they will continue to push for loot boxes with future titles, namely upcoming EA Sports games like FIFA 19 and their Ultimate Team mode, their real, true flagship title in Golden Geese. Just to give you some perspective, despite 2017 being host to a number of titles that perform below expectations commercially for EA, namely Mass Effect Andromeda and Star Wars Battlefront 2, they still managed to have a record financial year in 2017 because Ultimate Team and its card packs raked in so much freaking money. So while EA is willing to remove loot boxes from their more expendable projects, they are resolute on pursuing loot boxes where it really matters to them, despite encroaching government legislations. It goes to show that the notorious publisher hasn't really changed all that much, that their entire no loot boxes campaign is nothing but a sham, a tactical retreat rather than a course correction. They still have every intent of exploiting and manipulating FIFA players, of which there are plenty, given how popular the sport of football is outside of America. See all that green on this map? That's all the regions where football is the most popular sport, so we're talking about almost all of Latin America, all of Africa, most of Europe, and a significant portion of Asia. The kind of outreach that FIFA has is unlike anything out there, which makes it the prime product for EA to nickel and dime unassuming players. One of those players who recently found out the level to which Ultimate Team's card packs have afflicted him is a 32-year-old man named Michael, who recently spoke to news outlet Eurogamer to detail his own experiences with the infamous game mode. The article's headline should tell you everything you need to know. FIFA player uses GDPR to find out everything EA has on him, realizes he spent over $10,000 in 2 years on Ultimate Team. Hit the bar. So GDPR, for those who don't know, also known as the General Data Protection Regulation, is a law that was recently passed across all of Europe and gained significant momentum after the whole Facebook Cambridge Analytica debacle. The legislation stipulates that any corporation operating in Europe will have to not only gather data legally and under strict conditions, but also that those who collect and manage said data will be obliged to protect it from misuse and exploitation and respect the rights of data owners. Remember that time period when you began receiving all the policy update emails and notifications for the various services you used? Yeah, you have the GDPR to thank for that. While the law only applies to Europe, the entirety of the European Union is a big enough market that casting such a wide net for a regulation will essentially force companies to change their policies across the board on an international level. Now, on May 25th, 2018, the day GDPR came into effect, Michael, who had been hearing about the ongoing controversy surrounding loot boxes, used this new legislation to request that EA send him all data pertaining to his FIFA expenditures. He apparently reached out to a customer service representative who seemed somewhat confused by the unusual request, but after they talked to other departments and after EA asked Michael for personal information like name, address, and email, as well as a photograph and a copy of his government-issued ID, the process was started. Once all that information was processed, EA had exactly 30 days to provide Michael the requested data, as stipulated by the GDPR. So, 30 days later, Michael found himself sifting through 2 PDF format data dumps that totaled over 100 pages long, featuring all kinds of information, including audio files of his calls with EA customer support over the years. More importantly, the data detailed every item that Michael ever bought or sold over the past few years in FIFA Ultimate Team, and that's when he discovered just how much he had unwittingly spent on the game. By Michael's account, he was, quote, gobsmacked to discover that he had spent over $10,000 in 2 years on FIFA Ultimate Team. He also went into some detail about his gaming habits, stating that he would pretty much play Ultimate Team on a daily basis, spending anywhere from 30 minutes to 6 hours, depending on how much free time he had, and that he would play Weekend League on a weekly basis. Furthermore, he admitted that during special sales events and holidays, he would have easily bought thousands of FIFA points without a second thought. Michael noted, however, that he and his fiancée are fortunately in a financial position where such expenditures didn't have any kind of tremendous strain, while expressing that he has the utmost sympathy for those in a position of low income who may become addicted to loot boxes like FIFA's card packs. Making matters worse is the fact that Michael may have actually spent way more than he initially thought. While Michael estimated that the data showed he spent over $10,000, when Eurogamer sifted through his data, they found that the $10,000 might only represent what he spent on FIFA 18. Adding on top of that how much he spent on FIFA 17, the figure rises to a whopping $16,000 total, which Michael later corroborated after he himself revisited the data. Either way, Michael was apparently shocked to discover just how much he had spent on Ultimate Team, giving Eurogamer the following statement. I took the time to talk to my other half about this. We have a healthy disposable income, but you can imagine my shock that over the past 2 years, I had given EA just over $10,000. If anything, the data EA has provided me has made me realize that FIFA points are just not worth it, and $10,000 will be better spent over the next 2 years. Now, as illuminating as all this information was, Michael criticized EA for not disclosing some important data regarding which FIFA players he earned from which packs, stating the following. What surprised me was EA could tell me every player I bought and sold, but could not tell me what players I packed when purchasing loot boxes. The data did not even tell me what pack I had purchased, just the amount of FIFA points the pack cost. Another surprise was the audio files attached to the data. I understand that organizations record calls, but I did not expect EA to retain those calls for 2 years. On that front, here's what EA had to say. We have also withheld data impacting the security and integrity of EA products and services, data that, if disclosed, would affect the rights and freedoms of others, including EA and any other EA or third-party trade secrets. Automated decision-making, including profiting, and information about the logic involved and the significance of and envisaged consequences, we do not consider any automated decision-making by EA Incorporated to have any legal or other significant effect on data subjects. For more information on our anti-cheat, please see Section 3D of the Privacy and Cookie Policy. To that, Michael had this to say. To me, this is EA using loopholes to avoid providing full disclosure to their customers. This is the kind of data I was wanting to see. Can't say that I disagree with Michael here. It sounds to me like EA is unwilling to disclose specific data on the relationship between purchased card packs and items obtained because they know that the data could be used to deduce how EA goes about implementing loot boxes, and in turn, this might result in people finding out how insidious and manipulative they really are, giving consumers and government officials even more ammo to pursue potential legal action against them. They are fine with giving you a tour of the house, but the closet with all the skeletons in them, that's off limits. EA finally concluded by stating that they'll strive towards improving responses to requests involving data disclosure in the future, stating, quote, "We take our responsibility to protect players' data privacy very seriously, and it is absolutely our intent to provide choice and control over their information. EA takes great care to respond to data access requests like these in a timely manner and consistent with each player's requests." Oh boy, there's that word, choice. Anytime EA uses that word, you should be on high alert. Anyway, EA continued. Also, in full disclosure, we're working on the responses that players will see to GDPR requests like this. The quotes below are from some of our legal language, and obviously not all that helpful to a lot of players. Going forward, players requesting info will see a response that is clearer. Now, I'm sure there will be a wide variety of opinions regarding Michael's habits, with some arguing that Michael should be held responsible for how he handles his own finances. But if you ask me, this ordeal goes to show that there are just people out there who cannot help compulsively spending money in certain activities. Yes, I get that on some level people should be responsible for their own actions, that they can make their own choices, but understand that addiction is both psychological and chemical. Some people are by nature wired in such a way that they cannot help themselves without some kind of intervention, and in the midst of compulsive behavior, they tend to be unaware of how far off they've gone into the deep end. That's where companies like EA find their opportunities. They go out of their way to prey on the compulsive, on those who are prone to falling for their predatory monetization schemes and their glorified gambling mechanisms, on those who are wired to unwittingly become addicted. EA knows exactly what they're doing too. On Reddit, Michael noted that there was a section in the documents he received where he was classified as a, quote, spender. Internally, EA literally categorizes people to distinguish the whales from the rest, and who knows what they do with that information. Now, to Michael's credit, he was savvy enough to use the law in his favor. Taking advantage of the GDPR's new stipulations, he made EA give him his entire consumer profile, with the publisher having no choice but to comply. I'd be willing to bet that if such a request were made prior to GDPR's implementation, EA wouldn't have taken Michael's request seriously or be as cooperative. But with GDPR in place and having heard all the rumblings about loot boxes, knowing that EA would have to abide by the new data protection regulations, Michael actively took action to gain some insight into his own behavior, and now he seems intent on keeping himself in check moving forward. This, ladies and gentlemen, is why it's important that the predatory nature of loot boxes continues to be spoken about, that awareness continues to be spread, and this is why the law may be needed to keep rampant, unregulated game publishers in check. Without gamers rallying in unison against loot boxes, Michael may have never questioned his compulsive spending, and without GDPR, Michael may not have had the means to request information from EA that made him realize just how badly loot boxes actually affected him. The next step would be ensuring that legislators take loot box regulation into consideration, at least as long as the gaming industry insists on being willfully ignorant and complacent. Call it gambling or call it something else, but legislators need to acknowledge that loot boxes can pose a significant problem for the consumers. Case in point, Michael's situation, among others I've talked about in the past. Regulations could come in the form of stricter age restrictions, disclosure of odds and information like the relationship between the loot boxes you open and the items you earn, data that EA was suspiciously reluctant to provide. Having games warn players about the potentially addictive nature of loot boxes in-game and provide data on total expenditures right in the menus, so on and so forth. After all, the issue right now is that unlike just about everything potentially harmful out there, loot boxes have no system in place. It's a free-for-all that anyone can take advantage of to their liking. Casinos have a system. There are guidelines owners have to follow. There are licenses that need to be obtained. There are stipulations that mitigate the potential for the exploitation of unassuming consumers so that people who enter casinos know on some level what they're getting into. There is nothing of the sort for loot boxes, and in turn, people like Michael compulsively spend a crazy amount of money on opening digital packs, unaware of how deeply his finances were being affected. It's almost like this autopilot mode that people get into when these kinds of mechanisms hook the user, which is exactly what greedy game publishers are counting on. Now, Michael, being better off financially than most people, didn't suffer terribly from this ordeal. But there is certainly potential for adults in a more precarious position or kids who are unaware of how their insubordinate spending might affect their household's livelihood to fall prey to similar behavior, and greedy game publishers do not care about these kinds of ramifications because at the end of the day, they're raking in billions. History has proven that as long as they can get away with it, as long as they can keep pushing for loot boxes, as EA intends to do with the upcoming FIFA 19 and its Ultimate Team mode among others, they will keep doing it, and those in a position to stop it, like the ESA and the ESRB, being lobbied by companies like EA, prefer to sit idly by and let it happen. Anyway, let this be yet another cautionary tale about the potential harm that loot boxes can cause, about EA's conniving, underhanded ways, and about staying on your toes when it comes to spending money on microtransactions. Just as importantly as calling out greedy game companies is to strive to control yourself, to avoid reinforcing their methods by giving in to their chance-based monetization schemes, and to be responsible about your finances. But again, some people just compulsively by nature cannot help themselves. Publishers like EA know it, and they couldn't give a flying fuck as long as they remain legally unopposed and as long as their pockets continue to be filled like the crooks they are. With that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content and would like to support this channel directly, consider donating on Patreon. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out.